we're back. Matt, welcome to the podcast.
I was just reading one of my favorite authors, Derek Guajardo.
Oh, that's so nice.
Yeah.
Jason, what were you doing?
I was playing Donkey Kong.
Okay. So, welcome back to the podcast, man. How long has it been?
I don't even remember.
30 years.
So long, then now I'm in witness protection.
All right. Are you ready to ask? I think you have some fatherhood questions that we're going to be working with, and then we're going to talk about your project to unite Christian singles all over San Antonio and the world. How expansive is that program?
I have not done any type of cost analysis at all. So I don't know about the rest of the world. I'd have to succeed locally first.
Is your main focus just to find yourself a wife on this? Are you just gonna? Is it really? It's gonna be all Christian women that are only people that are allowed to enter your thing, and you're the only man available.
Definitely not.
That'd be pretty sick.
Episode of Christian Bachelor.
And it's just hey, I never told you that the option was me, but there you go.
As a single man, would you even consider
Why are
the
we wearing
idea?
the glasses?
Huh?
Why are we wearing the glasses?
Oh, I mean, I'm already married, so it doesn't really matter what I wear.
Really? That was the bit? That was the whole bit.
Wait, what bit? There was no bit.
You never wear sunglasses on a podcast.
I've never in my whole life of all the podcasts I've ever done, I've never had it before.
All right. You're right. I'm sorry. I apologize. It is very bright in here, so it's not a shock that you would wear sunglasses. Y'all see all the lights that are shining upon his rays. And the reason I look so good complected is because all this light. I mean, I'm probably getting a sunburn just being in here.
But back to the question to Matt. Would you ever even go to any of those shows?
Ooh, would you?
Those, what are they called? What are they? Not like, Bachelor is like very extreme. Oh, pull the microphone a little bit up to your.
Oh, so
You could pull it up.
Oh, how about that
arm
one
moves.
that,
hold on, let me answer the question. So,
I
I actually watched the whole season with my ex, and it was actually an addicting show. Of course, I got dragged into it. Like, I'm a man. I'm never going to like this. And then I'm like, well, why didn't Terry get with Rachel? I don't remember the names, but I'm just making names up.
Yeah.
And I'm like, what am I doing? Like, where's my man card? Like, it's clearly not here. Like, but Love is Blind. I thought that was cool because they have no idea, obviously, what they look like. So they really are just going off what they feel and talk about. So Matt might be the only one, but I don't know if I'd want to be like the whole world to see me and like, yeah. So
Got it.
would you? What if they had a Christian dating show?
If they had it, I mean, I feel like
It would be on the Angel Network, Angel Studios.
Doesn't it like have to? Isn't there have to be one at this point? Like there's one, or is one? I mean, I don't know, but
you know, right now y'all are starting beef with the show that does this, and we don't know it. And so now somebody's going to clip it and be like, "These guys hate our Christian dating show." And see,
I don't think there is one.
I bet there is. Matt, actually, I think there is. That's why you're here. Is that we've entered you and you're their first contestant.
But there has to be one.
I mean, I imagine there's many.
I mean, yeah,
general.
2024 there has to be.
Yeah.
They might not get the press. What, you asking ChatGPT if there's one?
I'm asking Bing because I don't use Google. I'm weird.
Okay.
Bing.
All right, I guess we're going to come back to Singlehood in a little bit. Matt does actually have a legitimate program. I know.
Watch Christians Look for Love on New. There is for 2014. I'm sorry. That's crazy.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. 2024 there had to be something.
What was it? Our friend was on a dating show, like the music one.
Gabe Baker?
Yeah. And that was kind of like, that was an interesting one.
Yeah. It wasn't a Christian one, but he was a Christian
But he
on
was
the
a
one.
Christian on it. And
Yeah.
so you'd see him like reading his Bible and he'd be like, yo, not about them ladies.
Oh, so you actually watched it.
Yeah. Well, my wife was all about those kind of shows. So I watched it.
I feel like y'all ain't providing the right leadership to your partners so that you don't get sucked into watching these shows.
Well, I was very curious about the Love is Blind part. So I generally wanted to see, you know, how Love is Blind is it, or is it just a gimmick? And I was like, oh no, they're really behind a wall for hours and hours and hours and days and weeks getting to know each other. So I was like, oh, that's cool. It's different.
That's weird.
Okay. We're going to come back to Singlehood toward the end. I know you got a pod after this. You want to plug that real quick?
This week I have an awesome podcast for the Flows You podcast. We're interviewing Nellie Van Sickle, who I call the paranormal pastor. He actually has a podcast called Dancing Toaster. We'll be talking.
There we go. That's it.
We'll be talking about it.
Good. There we go. Dancing toaster.
Make sure you check it out. So go to flowcu.com. Oh, if you want to go to this podcast, dang it, I was trying to be funny and it didn't work out.
All right, so we are going back to fatherhood. All right, take it away, Matt. What you got?
So before you become a father, you have these preconceptions.
Yeah.
Now, how old is your son?
3 months.
Okay. See, I'm a good friend.
Yeah, there we go.
What's different? We
Different.
thought something was going to be one way, and now you're like, oh.
Ooh. You got something for that?
I mean, it's changes, right? So, like, my first kid was a son, and so I imagined it was going to be a lot of, like, fishing and all that stuff, but it's not that. It's whatever he wants to like. You know what I'm saying? It's like we don't get to, and it's fine because I'm not a big fisher, and he's only 7, so we still have opportunities to go fishing, I guess. But there is that. Like, you imagine it's going to be a lot of ball catching or things like that, and I guess you could just make your kid throw balls at you and stuff. You could do that, but then when you have a daughter, it's the same idea. Like, what is it going to be? Is it going to be
Tea time,
which it is? Painting my nails, yes. Is it wearing as her dressing up in different dresses or things like that? Yes. It's very, but there were times where she was all about living that Hot Wheels life to impress brother, and so that was good. But yeah, I think it's interesting because I don't know, like, as a baby, I thought, oh, it's going to be this. I mean, I was pretty sure that babies were going to cry and I was going to have to change their diapers. And that was a true statement. So I feel like that happened. But it's a hard one. Like, is there any misconceptions that happen? Like, what would be a misconception that you feel like what is one of those notions that you have that what being a father is? Like, that's even better.
What's happening right now?
What?
What are you even asking? What's a conception to see if it's a misconception?
What? Yeah, no. So, like, if he has preconceptions, so what are some things he thinks of as a father?
That could be like 1,000 things.
Yeah, but it's easier to answer those than me tell him what is it.
What's
like,
a conception of a father? Like, wait.
No. Like, what is your expectation? Like, being a dad, like, what's one of the expectations you have? Like, it's going to be...
No, but he's asking a question about something else.
All right, well, you know what? Don't yell at me. And I can't see your eyes.
Yes, start the drama. It'll bring the views.
See? No, this is why.
No, I'll say there's something about, like, I think you think you'll love the child, and I think on the Christian tip you think about, like, the love of that's choice and love that's felt, love that's sacrificed. There's like the 3 versions, and there's natural some Venn diagram overlaps between those. But you think you would love the child, but then, like, to love every single detail about them, like to love their blinking, to love their smiling, to love the time to change their diaper. I love that he would be, like, going to sleep with me. I'd be holding him as he goes to sleep. That, but I didn't know I would love every other detail, like watching him close his hand and open his hand. It's like the most simple detail of all. I wasn't thinking about that detail of, everything. Like, it's every single part of his being I find myself captivated by. And my sister and I were kind of talking about this idea. She didn't like the language, but I think the language fits for me, which is the language of the euphoric experience of being first in love that you have, where you almost can see only good things about the romantic partner. That being similar in my experience as a father, going like, oh, I'm totally in love in the sense of it's quite literally every intimate part of a person, because again you're cleaning all parts of him. You're cleaning his private part. It's very, very intimate as far as the closeness you are with another being, and in an intimacy that you actually haven't even experienced with a woman, in the sense of like maybe an older husband has cleaned his older wife or something like that because they can't do it anymore. Maybe they get that, but that's like the 50 years of marriage. But to get that experience of going, I'm helping every part of him, and then seeing how filling it is to see him, like, seeming to fall in love with you too, and excited to hear from you, and like even your voice calms him down when he's worried, when you haven't even got a chance to go pick him up yet. But anyway, those are a few of mine that I would add into the mix.
What's the hardest part for you so far?
Hardest part.
Don't say something like sleep, because that's probably everyone's.
Not throwing them across the room. I think it's interesting because it's like I've always been a patient person, or at least I hope I have. And with my children, they've really figured out how to make me mad at all moments.
And clarify the ages of your kids again.
4 and 7. And so there are times where I'm like it's just like, oh hey, if I leave the refrigerator open, unlocked for a matter of seconds, somebody will, my daughter will have like 7 yogurts in her hand and try to eat them. And so it's just like, come on, dude. Like I literally just had to go to the pantry. You could have given me 1 minute of just, I forgot moments. And so it's just like, there is that part where it's like, oh, like you're a lot. But then at the same time, I think, man, I was a lot. I deserved patience in this area. I need to give patience in this area. So,
but yeah, I think I'm riding on the euphoria of, as I mentioned, like the being in love and captivated and all of these good emotions. So I'm kind of riding on that wave. But the only difficult part I think thus far has been in the context of when you are parenting. It's your preferences and your spouse's preferences. Naturally, it seems like the women are more geared toward fear and even legitimate fears. Like, as an adult, I don't really think about the flu season. I've 39 years of life, I've never thought about, oh no, it's the flu season. Like, let me be more cautious or more careful or something. Or I've never thought about RSV, which I guess maybe you have asthma, right? Or no? Or you had?
You had in the past, yeah.
Okay, so then maybe you've thought about it as somebody with asthma, but again, I wouldn't even know what it stood for. Like, I was, oh, what is that? What does that even stand for? So, so then you have like, what does when you have preferences, your spouse has preferences, and like, to me, I've kind of created like 4 quadrants of like, okay, I could do what she wants to do, which is more careful and cautious, not what I want to do, and kind of have some disappointment. I could do what I want to do, and maybe she has a little bit more. She has more fear that she's wrestling with. But I know that I have a wife that's fearful. If I do it my way, I can do it. Maybe I can just go do whatever I wanted to do without them, and then maybe she has more responsibility to take care of him on her own. Or I can maybe her bigger preference might be, or has more been like, to be home here together with him and not have a bunch of social interactions thus far. But so that's a challenge when you're trying to navigate, like, even as the leader who makes the final decision, am I going to go it her way, my way? Am I going to go on my own, or are we all going to be together? And her preference is more on the cautious, careful side. I'm more maybe free-spirited in that context. So I think that's been the source of conflict about all that.
Well, it's in that same vein, right? Like, that's the other part about having kids, is that it makes being married harder.
Yeah, it is.
Because you have to, like, now you have a distraction in between you and your wife. And y'all both have your own opinions on how that's going to work, as he was talking about the different parenting styles. And it's easy to be so focused on the kids that you don't make time for the wife, or the wife doesn't make time for you, or whatever the situation is. And like, especially when we first had our child, I was working. I had just got back to my job, and my job was very a lot. And so I would get home from work, go straight to sleep, and then wake up the next morning. And for like weeks, like, I went like this where I wasn't even talking to anybody. I was just so focused on trying to get work done, I realized I was closing out everybody else. And so it's so easy to like do those kind of, and then it was like the kids got time, but the wife didn't get time. It was like at home, everybody was like, "Daddy, we love you." Oh, sorry, the baby. It was like, I hold the baby, and it was like, "Hey, I think you're awesome," but the wife wasn't getting the time, and so that really helped me make the decision on if I wanted to look for something new, or if I wanted to try to figure out a way to be home with the kids, and kind of one of the reasons I had to be a stay-at-home dad, because I realized I needed to focus on both.
That's why I hear a lot of obviously having a kid, but y'all are saying it, but what I've heard, from reading and other people, it can put a strain on the marriage. But as a new father, what ways has it made y'all closer, if any?
That's a good question.
Yeah, for us, I think it's just been about the amount of teamwork and collaboration that's done. Because naturally, if I'm gonna be doing anything, I'm taking him with me. If she's gonna be doing anything, she's taking him with her. So like, there's a checkpoint. It very much feels like we are moons revolving around his planet. That we are this like everything revolves around his well-being, his safety, his livelihood. So then it's like, if we're thinking about doing something together, we're thinking about, can we feed him, change his diaper, give him a new outfit before we go? That's a whole process, So he might eat for 10 to 20 minutes. He might need to be burped for 10 to 20 minutes, and then he might need to be changed, and maybe changed again depending on what happens in that time period. Then that's okay. Now it's an hour and 20 minutes in, and then it's like. But it's coordinating, hey, this event's coming up. All right, we did church for the first time. It was like, all right, so what time do we got to, start this whole process to ensure that we're there on time? So anyway, I think there's so much collaboration that I think has made us closer in that way. But and there's also this idea, though, that you may not feel romantically closer for a period of time, but it's more of like, oh, you see the team dynamic more in this arena of marriage versus the other.
It's pretty cool.
What about you?
Well, I think you become more grateful because you realize it was because of her that the baby existed.
Yeah, that's real.
And that she held it. And then there is that part where like it does help you understand her more because you've seen 9 months of pain, like her dealing with her food. Like with my wife, she was diabetic at the time, so she had to do needles every day. And so that was like, she was sacrificing for the kid. And to me, that was awesome. It's like, I seen you go through all this stuff. And so like, so we can have this. This is awesome. And so I think because of that, I think there is a lot more gratefulness that you didn't even realize you had when you had it. Because it's like, first, it's like, hey, I'm just glad you think I'm cool enough to hang out with me all the time. But now it's like, I'm cool enough for you to cultivate a child inside your belly. You know what I mean? And to like deal with the discomfort that entails. And it's pretty awesome. So I think that does help with that.
Yeah.
So obviously, child's only 3 months. There's only so much parenting that y'all can go over. But have y'all talked about in the past or recently about ways that you'll be disciplining or ways that you'll be wanting to raise a child? Y'all feel like y'all are on the same page about those when things come up?
Yeah, and a lot of things come up too because our family members will see interactions or we'll see things like how much sugar they have, red 40, again, the dyes in the foods, and there's a whole like wave of communities you didn't even know existed, crunchy parents or crunchy moms or crunchy, I don't know if they're crunchy dads. Crunchy dads? Is there communities?
I have no idea
but
what you're talking about.
Oh yeah, I didn't know either until I started again talking to other parents and like, oh yeah, like there's the phrase crunchy. I suppose it's referring to whole foods that happen to be crunchy, but it's like the reference is that, but it just means people who are more conscious. It might be people who are using less plastic Tupperware, people who use glass as opposed to plastic. They'll use instead of they'll use dye from beets instead of dye like red 40 that's artificially created or however it's created. So all of these things, like, you don't even know about the communities that are involved, but then you're bouncing ideas off of you. Hey, how intense are you going to be? And then him being a boy also kind of in some ways puts more domain in my arena. And I know this is a common struggle that parents have is how do you make a decision? Because so if you imagine it, there's one side of the fence is like, hey, I don't want them to have any sugar, any dyes, to be very whole or be very crunchy and all that. Then the other version of it is I don't want my kid to be the one left out of the party. Like, hey, they go to a party with 4-year-olds, everybody's eating cake. My kid's gonna be the one that doesn't eat cake, or my kid's gonna be one that doesn't drink the soda or the Kool-Aid or whatever it is. So all of that to say is there's but so we at least that's, so again, to your point about 3 months, he is only eating one thing. It's just he's only eating one thing, so that's easy now. But I think as we move forward, I think if you're talking about projecting the standards of what I think we're gonna be, I think we'd probably be more on the side of more crunchy, more whole, more glass stuff, more avoiding dyes. Which I think there's implications of that because it's like we know the Bible verse, bad company corrupts good character. So we also think about like how easy would it be for our kid to want to do that when he's around people who are eating in a way that we don't approve of.
I for sure would be crunchy. I'd be super crunchy. I remember this one time, I don't know if I told you this before, but I was living in Austin, and there was these parents. They were some Latin parents that didn't speak very good English. And we were at the park, and they're pushing their stroller, and this obviously only English-speaking, I think it was like a mom and a grandma, came into the stroller without asking, and just put their hands in there and was like, "Oh, he's so cute." And in my mind, I'm like, why aren't these parents like, you didn't ask? Like, I don't know where your hands have been. Like, get away from my carriage immediately. Like, I'm just so livid. You know what I mean? Yeah. Like, well, that's very disrespectful in my opinion to not even ask. So I feel like, I'm going to be a psycho parent.
That's funny. Well, it's funny because even like you were talking about like the sugars and like that was something that we were really focused on. Like my wife was like, our son's not going to have sugar. Like his first birthday was a watermelon pie, like a watermelon. It was just watermelon, but it was this cake. And so there was that. But it was like, but as he was growing up, it was like, am I really going to stop all sugar options?
Yeah.
And so it was interesting as we grew up in it. It was like either there was two options. Either I corrupted it and just made it toll where it was all sugar all the time, or we try to figure out a balance of what
like
she wanted and what I felt like, again, because there was that part of me that was like, I don't want him to be in a place where he can't do a thing, right? Because we're like, oh, well, everybody else is having Halloween treats or whatever the situation is. We're going to give him apple slices that you could give to him.
You could just teach him to say, listen, my parents make better decisions than yours.
That's
why I
can't. You bring it up as a joke, but the reality of it is, how do you, like, so he said that in a way that was like, it's interesting how any one position, you almost create a hierarchy of, are we, we don't want to do this to our son. I'm almost on the, again, as I mentioned, I'm on the other side of it. So I'm almost going like, I'm, especially with a son, I go, I'm okay with him suffering more than probably I would be as a daughter. Like, no, like, come at me and say that all my friends are eating candy and why can't I have any? Oh, you're one of us. You're in this family. You're not like everybody else. So why are you even? Why would you even let that thought cross your mind? Again, I'm projecting. Yeah. I might get softer, and y'all might have to check me at another podcast down the line.
What's your last name, son?
But it's I'm projecting the imagination of what I think I'm okay with, at least right now, the struggle of being different. I'm okay with, especially as a son. I feel like I might be softer with the daughter. Your thoughts on that?
Well, I obviously am. I was super like strict and stuff with my son, and I'm definitely not with my daughter. My daughter is now a terror, so that was on me. She like, I don't know. She just gets away with a lot more than my son would. And it's also because there's also that, there's also just in general, like the idea of being, disciplining a girl compared to disciplining a boy, I guess. Does that make sense? Like,
do y'all split disciplining responsibility? So you're talking about spanking?
Yeah.
Okay. So do y'all split, are y'all 50-50 on disciplining both, or is that, how do you?
Yeah, I mean, but in general, the hard part is that I'm with the children more.
Yeah.
So then there's that part of it, right? I'm definitely less, and again, there's not much happening in that regard. But even when I first like, this needs to happen, it was way harder to deal with the girl than the boy. I'd be more worried about how hard the spanking was or whatever the situation was.
Yeah.
And so then there's that. But in general, just like telling her no is way harder than telling my son no.
Yeah.
I don't know how to explain that, but it's just like, there's definitely this like barrier in between children to boys and girls. And maybe it's just because I'm a guy, right? Like I think it's easier to talk to a boy than to talk to a girl.
So is your wife more strict on the daughter than you?
Yeah.
And vice versa?
Yeah. I had to learn to be stricter. Like when it first started, it was like, I was like, I can't do this. Like I can't spank her. I can't do any of that stuff. It's just not, I'm afraid I'm going to hurt somebody. And I don't want it because I'm a big guy. But then I learned that it's like, if I don't, I'm hindering my wife by making her look like the bad guy and not me. And so I had to learn to be 50-50 where, so she doesn't dislike. So my daughter doesn't dislike my wife, but also respects me where it's the opposite. And now she's hilarious because like if somebody hurts her feelings, my daughter will be like, I don't love you. I only love daddy. Or if she'll go to mommy and or if I say to them, she goes, I don't love you. I only love mommy. Which just 4 minutes ago, she said the exact opposite.
Yeah.
So still working on her.
Your son doesn't do that? Women's manipulation.
Yeah, no, she's definitely more manipulative than my son. My son is very to the point. And again, he would just rather yell in his room than deal with people. Like earlier today, I was like, yo, dude, you gotta do your homework. And then I was like, just work on your homework. And then I was like, okay. So then I went and washed some dishes. And then I just heard him yelling. And I walk in, I'm like, you okay? And he's like, I don't want to do homework. And I was like, why don't we talk about it? And he's like, I'm good. I'll do the homework. And then close the door and then he's yelling again. Ah, ah, ah. And I'm like,
I'll do it, but I'm not going to do it happy.
yeah. I'm like, okay, dude. Like, or he spilt water on his homework. And was like, Daddy, it needs to dry. And I'm just like, you're just thinking of everything you can to not do homework, which is fine. I understand how that is.
Yeah.
And, but it was one of those things where like, dude, you're trying every piece of my patience. And it's like, those are the days where I'm like, I don't wanna. Like, honestly, if I didn't have to make him do homework today, I wouldn't have because I just didn't want to deal with it. And my wife's like, no, he needs to do his homework today. So then I'm like, all right, I'm doing this thing, which I don't want to do because I would rather just have fun with everybody and then making everybody do stuff they don't want to do. But I understand the thought process of it, and I wanted him to get his stuff done. And what he doesn't realize is that if he doesn't do his homework now, he's gonna have to do all of his homework like the last day, and he's gonna hate it. Where he has to spend like 6 hours working on homework instead of playing and doing other stuff. But trying to explain that to him is harder than you think it would be.
So it's finding a good balance between being a friend and being a parent.
Yeah. And a lot of people don't believe that you should be friends with your kids. I bet Derek. Derek, are you a proponent of the friend thing?
Yeah, I think it's if I'm the authority. Like I'm the authority, and hey, like friends look a little bit different. I guess if we're talking about a Venn diagram of hey, the friends on the left and the authorities on the right. So yeah, there's their overlap. Does a friend listen? Yeah, I'm somebody who listens. Am I as a friend encourage? Yeah, I encourage.
Right.
But at the end of the day, part of my role is until he turns 18 is like there's responsibility I bear in raising him and giving him consequences and taking away things. A friend doesn't do that, like
yeah, that's true.
So then there's parts of the Venn diagram that don't overlap, and I go understand where that is. So I think the extreme version is they're a friend and have zero authority, and there's like complete maybe complete overlap or complete separation between the two. But I'm cool with. I think I'm okay not being looked at as a friend.
I would imagine it would be both. In my imagination, I'd want to be 60% parent, 40% friend. But I bet there are times where I get to be 80% friend, 20% parent, but then there'll be a lot more times probably I'm going to be 80% parent or 100% parent, 0% friend, depending on what's going on. I'm sure that things change. But I do think and by friend I don't mean you're not respected and it's just about having a good time and laughing together and then sharing things together. And, just like a regular friend would. But also obviously having that parent there. That's what I would imagine it to be like without having a kid. But
no, I just imagine the total insanity of that, where it's like, I'm gonna be your friend and I won't tell your dad.
Dad's gone crazy.
Like Your dad won't know any of the things. That happen.
No. I mean, you laugh about it, but there is parents who practice. I know people. I think there's friends of ours that had daughters, and they would in the evening. Like, I think they call it pillow talk or something like that. But it was like this very innocent time where, hey, like, consequences are removed from the conversation, and we could have open discussion without the parenting force of, you tell us something, you get punished for. This is the time you could talk without repercussion.
Oh, and
So-
I've had those conversations. Like, I've had that where, like, anything you talk about at this moment, we're not going to get mad about, no matter what you do, because I just need to know what's going on.
You've had that at their age right now?
Yeah.
Okay, interesting.
Well, and it's how do I explain this? I'm just always like a few years ago we had some issues with farther out family members
Yeah.
where they had their own issues with their kids in
Yeah.
those kind of situations, and it made me make sure that I was just checking on them when
No.
it comes to inappropriate things.
Yeah.
Like, anytime I leave my kids anywhere, I want them to be honest with me what went on when I was gone. And because I grew up, and because me myself, I'm a child of abuse. There is that automatic paranoia that I want to know what's going on. So I always want to offer a safety area where my kids won't be destroyed if they tell the truth. Because and I know, because I grew up with that fear of, what happens if I don't tell anybody?
Yeah.
I don't want this person not to like me anymore. I don't want that situation.
Yeah.
And so I never want my kid to feel like I'm not there on their side, because I'm 100% on their side.
Yeah. I do think about that with regard to what does my, like, the idea, maybe it's the trope is that an abuser maybe will threaten the child, hey, you can't tell your parents or I'll kill them off too, or I will hurt them too. And then so in my head, I'm going, like, anticipating that potential manipulation by the abuser, like, to carry myself in such a way where my son couldn't be manipulated to believe as somebody else. Or, like, again, the abuser trying to, like, use something like that, saying, like, my dad will kill you. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like,
Yeah.
like that element of respect and reverence for what his dad would do to the other person. And maybe there's an edge off of that, because I wonder, is there a version where that's overly done? For example, I don't want my dad to go to prison for killing this dude who did something, but something where, hey, my dad will do exactly what he needs to do. He won't cross the line to go to prison, but he will protect me and he will stand up for what's right. And so I guess maybe that's what it can't be. Hey, he's just a loose cannon and he'll kill anybody who does anything bad.
Sure.
But it also won't be, oh, like, I'm afraid this guy actually will take out my dad. You follow what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
So you want to appear dangerous to your
There's an element of danger. For sure.
you could be dangerous.
Yeah. And I think about that, like, again, what does he see? Again, he see dad hitting the weight room. What does dad's muscles look like? How fit does he, does he see his dad? And all those things are things that cross my mind even now of going, I want there's the trope of dad bod that I don't want to live into. I don't want him to go, oh yeah,
Strong.
Dad's out of shape. Like, as much shape as I can be in, I plan to be in.
And I had to have that conversation when it came to my weight or things with my son, like, where he was just worried that I wasn't strong enough to defend him. And I'm like, Daddy's strong enough. And Daddy used to be a power lifter. Daddy has muscles. And I had to, but he was more worried that he was going to get fat because I am. And I had to, show him pictures and, homie, Daddy used to have abs. Daddy used to have muscles. It's just Daddy stop worrying about it. And so you're not in a bad place genetically. You'll be fine. But at the same time, he'll even say, Daddy, but I do need you to be in shape so you can be around. And so he'll, even we went on a field trip a few days ago, and he was like, Dad, I want you to pack your lunch, but I just want you to pack apples. And I was like, what? I can't have a sandwich? She's like, no, you can only make healthy choices.
Yeah, on that crunchy tip already.
Yeah, and my daughter does the same thing. She's like, Daddy, You just need to eat healthy foods. And, I've been really trying to eat better.
Yeah.
But like even like a few days ago, she was like, Daddy, I want broccoli for breakfast. And I'm like, you don't really want broccoli for breakfast? You're just saying that? And so, but we didn't have just broccoli. We had broccoli
No.
and carrots. So I was like, here's your option. And she's like, I don't want that. I want carrots. And I'm like, okay, dude. Like, how if we just do the normal breakfast?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah, it is something that it crosses my mind. Again, we're far away from that time period, but the idea of addiction and like food addiction, sugar addiction, junk food addiction, some of these things definitely crossed my mind. And it does speak to that idea of the part of the Venn diagram with the friend. The friend is the safe place I can go to talk about things, because like, again, in addiction circles, like you talk about triggers. Triggers are things. It's oftentimes it's negative emotions you feel that accumulate over days, weeks, months, and then there's an explosion, or there's a acting out in that addictive space. So again, if it's on the food side, maybe it's binge eating. If it's on the purity side, it's going to watch pornography, whatever. It's there's like to be mindful of
Coping mechanisms.
what's building up, and then so I'm thinking about that proactively. What is the culture that I build with my son, where he can just know that he has regular release valve to talk about things that bother him, things that make sense, things that don't make sense. I know I go through that too. Like I remember even with like church stuff. We went back to church. One of my friends wasn't there. I didn't see him, and then I noticed I had a little bit of anxiety about the whole idea. And I was like, it's kind of crazy. I'm at church. I have anxiety about a friend not coming. Not that I worry about him spiritually, because he could be doing great at another church. And not that I think that that's the end of our friendship, because I think I've been friends with plenty of people who's either stopped going or have never gone to my church. So I don't have any issue with those things. But there is an illogical anxiety that I have. Again, there's some logical, but it's somewhat illogical as far as him not being at this one service. All of that to say, it's interesting where we can have real, like, legitimate causes for our anxiety, our worry, or our negative emotions, and then sometimes we also can have illegitimate pieces.
I got a question on the Christian side.
Yeah.
A lot of y'all have come from I would say, a stricter denomination than the average.
Yeah.
And sometimes that really works well with children, and sometimes they grow up to resent it because they feel like it was forced upon them. So I guess I have like a two-part question. So for me, for one question I have is on dating, right? So you have a son. Obviously, it's going to be a while from now.
Yeah.
Probably looking at, 14, 15, 16 years. How are you? Is he going to go on encouragement dates too, or in high school? I'm just kidding. Or is that going to be like completely off? And then how will you be on the Christian side, where like, how much do you like it be like full pasture, like you're gonna be a Christian, or is it gonna be more like, this is what Daddy does? You're gonna see my walk, and I would love for you to do the same thing. In between, I'll let you.
Yeah, it's a thought. I'm 21 years on the Christian side of things, and I've looked at different ways different people do it. I think that often in these questions, like there's two examples pitted against each other. Then there's like, again, the Venn diagram, that's where they overlap. I think about examples of there's this concept, like, you're probably familiar with it in sales, but it's like when you assume the sale, or you assume like this idea, like there's part of that I imagine, again, projecting, that I assume we are Christian and he's Christian, not a converted one, even as he's 5 through 10, but will there be times where I'm like, oh, what our family does is we, as Christians, we reach out to our classmates and invite them over to meals. So like, that's one thing that we as Christians do. So like, that's not saying, oh, well, if you decide to become one or not one day, then you can too. But going almost like, we as like create a culture of here's who we are and like how we do things. Yeah. So then like the implications are the I guess the implications of that when it comes to dating is we as a family take care of women. We take care of our friends. We build the people up. So the culture of, yeah, like, is there somebody you can make feel special? Like, hey, that you can feel special again as a 15-year-old. Like, yeah, do we make people feel special? For sure. Do we make them feel prioritized? For sure. Do we spend time to listen to them, ask them meaningful questions? For sure. That's who we are, and that's what we do. We do that we do that with our friends, the guys that we come over. We do that with girls at school. We do this with girls at church. That's who we are. That's what we do. Then when it comes to romance, I think there's some of where that authority comes off and saying, yeah, absolutely. If you understand how we've raised you, these values, the idea that you would be attracted to similar values that we've raised you with, whether it's on the modesty piece, on the holiness piece, or the generosity or humility, those are characteristics that are more and more rarely found in the Christian faith, but certainly in the Abrahamic faiths. But so I think there is that assumed piece of it that I don't hear talked about as much. I hear it talk about in sales. I don't hear it talk about it in parents, but I hear it maybe tangentially mentioned as far as here's who we are, here's how we do things in this house. But I think it's more of that. And then if they're dating outside of our faith culture, then it's like, I guess the question is, how do you navigate your child, 14, 15, 16, 17, who's dating outside of your faith culture? Is that completely outside of the debate? Like, hey, they're dating an atheist, or is that they're dating somebody at the Methodist church down the street? And it's like, all right, but I think it's similar, which is, well, we as a family, we hang out together. So yeah, bring her over for dinner. Or hey, we're gonna do a movie night. Hey, invite that girl you're dating, or invite that person you're interested in. So it's less of like, it's understanding the autonomous nature of people. Like, he's gonna be 18, he's gonna be able to decide whatever he wants. But yeah, so I think that's all of that. I think maybe the question that I have for myself is, there's this John Maxwell principle, which is like his parents tried to have the cool house where there was the pool table, the ping pong, the foosball, the basketball court outside with the cement. So you try to use that as a home base for the friends, so that John would bring his friends over, and then afterward he would have a debrief session with John talking about the behavior, like which behaviors are acceptable and are unacceptable that your friends exhibited during their time playing and hanging out with everybody. Which I think that's pretty amazing, like the idea of like debriefing. And I wonder at what point I'm gonna do less and less debriefing, especially when it comes to romance, because I think there's a little bit more sensitivity as far as like my son getting debriefed about the behaviors that his romantic interest exhibited over dinner. You understand what I'm saying? But hopefully, like, I guess the hope is that he will be well trained enough to begin to identify the behaviors that we collectively don't see as unacceptable.
It's interesting because I believe that same idea, but I don't think I've thought of it as this is our household, this is how we do the thing. It's just like, in general, I just think that I want my kids to treat people with respect and love, and I want them to trust the people. I want them to trust people, but I want them to learn to earn that trust. Like, I don't want them just to blindly trust people, right? Like, I want them to know what's going on and what the situation is, but at the same time, I want them to. But I also don't want to be in a place where I am like the monster, where it's like, if you don't become a Christian, I'm going to get you out of my house, or if you do this, you're going to get kicked out of the house. Because I definitely don't. I've seen that happen, and it freaks me out, because I'm like, if you always have that, I want you to be successful kind of heart, I think that will work. But there is that part. But in general, my plan is just not to have them date, just no dating whatsoever, so I don't have to worry about it.
So you've seen that up close and personal as far as the idea of like the ultimatum type stuff. I guess I hear about the ideas, but I've never known anybody who actually, again, maybe I always want to acknowledge I might be in a unique place to talk to unique people who have unique maturity that I don't, like, I've never seen it actually happen. I've never known it to happen, but you've seen it actually happen.
I've known it to happen. I've known like a separate faith. I know people where they decided they liked the same person, the same, where they decided to do that. I've seen them kicked out. I mean, I've been in places.
They decided to like the same person.
Oh, where they decided to like the same sex.
Same sex. Oh yeah.
And so the same person. Yes, they decided to like themselves. They fell in love with themselves, married themselves. It was crazy. But no, I've seen that, and I've been a part of that. I've also been to the part where it's like somebody was like, "Yeah, my family kicked me out of my house when I was because there's this one story where a friend where their parents pretty much left them with the person they were dating and said, "That's your family now," because we refuse to be a part of that. And it's like seeing stuff like that freaks me out. Like I'm just like, I can't imagine. I'm from Austin, so I definitely had people where they decided they were trans and their family kicked them out, or they decided they're gay, their family kicked them out, or whatever the situation was. And it's like, I do believe that. I don't know how that's helpful. I don't know that's helpful to the success of your kid wanting to be successful whatsoever. Like if you're in that total ultimatum thing. Like if you don't, like, I want my kid to love God and I want them to be in that place, but I also don't want them to feel like I'm making them do it. And I feel like that's a good example is just by living that life going, I love what it is. But at the same time, having that, I like how you said it, like having a standard without actually being a standard. Like it's a standard because that's just what we do. It's not, we love people. We take care of them. We invite them to church. This is what we do. We invite them to our house. We have friends over. But that's also another, it's funny, the debriefing thing happens just because my kids ask questions. Right?
Yeah.
And so like, I'll be like, we have a friend come over where the kid is a little more aggressive and is a little more, violent, not in a bad way, just more
like
aggressive
play fighting or whatever.
Yeah. And so it's like, and then the daughter will be like, "Why don't you do that more, Daddy? Why doesn't Bubba play with me like that? Like where we have more fun, And Bubba's like, I just want to play video games. I don't want to be, like, or she almost likes the other person more than her brother because they're more fun. And so then it's like, but that's cool. But we also want to make sure we're respecting the things that are around. So if you see this, I want you to, or there's another kid where it's like they're doing a thing. It's like, we don't do that. We don't throw poop at other people. We don't, these are things that we don't do. And so it's almost.
Is that a hypothetical or that's a real one? I'm just like, the things like that just enter your brain or you're like, oh no, this actually happened and we had to talk about that. I don't know.
I think his response should tell you it's true.
I feel like they could have been real or they weren't, or they, I feel like, yes, there are things that happen.
Oh, okay.
But I don't want to, like, I'm not trying to blast people.
Yeah. Okay, cool. I didn't know.
And there's a chance that it was my kid that threw the poop.
Okay. Yeah. Got it. Okay. Got it. Let me see if you said something there that I was curious about. Friends.
Oh, sorry.
Oh, you know what I wonder about?
Let me use the restroom real quick.
Yeah, go for it. So
I'll just talk about you while you're gone.
I do wonder about if you raise your child with a legitimate relationship with God, like in their walking with God and it's a part of their ethos and how they operate and think and and then the idea then of like, I know we ceremonialize the conversion, and appropriately so. I think that's very much biblical. But I wonder how that looks, because I think we almost have had a criticism for anybody who would kind of operate in that way, who would be like, "Oh yeah, I've always been a Christian," but it's like on this side of it, fatherhood. I'm going, like, is it possible where somebody really like for as long as they've known, they've had sin, they've worked on sin, they've worked on character defects, they've kind of they've always wanted Jesus to be Lord. They've never known a time where they didn't really consider Jesus Lord. But any thoughts on that?
Oh no. So my jokester head automatically goes, so then are there parents that let their kids become as terrible as possible so they can have an awesome conversion story?
Yeah, again, I don't know about the parent side of it, but it's certainly
no, like in a terrible way. Like let them go out and drink, let them do all the terrible things. So then when they do get converted, they have a great story to show how converted they are. You know what I mean? Which I think is a terrible thing, right? Like it's like,
yeah,
you don't want to do that. So that's the funny part of it. Or the, I don't know, weird story. But yeah, no, I understand what you're saying. Like the idea of if you always raise them to be a Christian and they're just automatically a Christian.
Yeah.
But I do think there's always that part, like how many times I've sat with a preteen or a teen and they've been like, I think there's just that part where you have to realize for yourself that you've let down God. And so it's a thing. It's a thing where like you have to realize it. And so that's going to happen no matter what. Like maybe they didn't go off and go drinking and do all the stuff, but they still cheated on their test or did something else where they realize that it was wrong and they have to realize it for their own. So even if you raise a kid to do all those things, they still have to come with that realization where the conversion happens, right? Where it's like, I'm realizing that I am putting Jesus on the cross. This is happening. They have to go through that emotional thing, right? Like
They have to? It has to be emotional?
all right, you're right. I shouldn't have used that word. I feel like it's a
I guess
necessity.
I just wonder because we have one version of it where it's like, yeah, radical repentance, and it's like the deeds are clear, all of these things, but then like a version of that where it's like, yeah, like in our household, we're repenting of stuff like 3 times a week or something that pops off because we're relational, we have meals together, There's more opportunities to sin against each other. Yeah, like, I don't know. I think about it less in a household where they're getting ongoing, what we would call discipling or training. It seems less like, oh yeah, they had this powerful one-time moment in Bible studies versus, yeah, like he was getting Bible verses,
Sure.
On an ongoing basis. But
Yeah.
we'll let that sit. But I do want to segue to our single friend in the studio.
Oh yeah.
And your little project. So you want to talk about the project?
Yeah, as right now it's a thought process. It's a pray about it, get advice. But essentially, this thought came to my head when I was at a church. I won't say the name, but more than one time, the pastor would make a joke or would say something, and we'd be talking about a girl in the crowd or something like that. And then he would say, now, men, that's not an excuse for you to go up and try to talk to her afterwards or try and go and holler at her or whatever the case may be. And I was like, wait, the Bible clearly states supposed to date in the church. Like, don't say date in the church, but it's, you're supposed to date. This is the place where you should meet somebody. You know what I mean? Which I understand why he said that. It was a really, really big church, and there's no discipling on a grand level like that. So who knows where the majority of people, walk in their faith is like. But my problem that I had with it is that there was no alternative option for them. So there was no, hey, let's get people who want to find, a wife or a husband. Let's get them together. Let's see where they're at emotionally, spiritually. Let's, train, let them know the things that they need to know, and then, how to date. Let's get a group together in public where, all of us are going out and dating, in a healthy way that has oversight, that is teaching people how to date godly. Instead, I feel like it's just, you just get preached at in the crowd, and then you're left to do it on your own. And then what happens is, someone from the world goes and talks to the girl or the guy, they meet somebody and they end up dating somebody from the world, and or they're just single for these unnecessarily extremely long times. Sometimes it's a God's plan for them, right? We need to have our season of singleness, whatever. But there's no intention of getting people to come together in a godly way. And the best example that I've ever seen that was at the International Church of Christ, Mission Point Christian Church, where I saw it. Where they would do something called encouragement dates. And so you can correct me if I'm wrong, but encouragement dates are supposed to just encourage both parties. I haven't heard you say both parties, but it's supposed to encourage the woman. But I heard you say because whether the Christian men take these women out or not, ungodly people are going to be trying to talk to them and trying to take them out. Yeah. So rather having someone who has good intentions do it is the oversight. But I'm very, very sure. I mean, it's probably very encouraging back to y'all's college days or single days. It was probably very encouraging for you as well. Mm-hmm. And that is how a lot of people end up actually getting married and, do talk to someone else in the church and say, hey, I'm really liking this person. And people end up having families and getting together because of that, as a consequence, which is great. And I think that needs to be in all churches. And so ultimately my goal would be to try and start a group of people that are interested in godly dating, biblical godly dating. So we're going to use the scriptures in it. We'll obviously have some kind of, hey, where are you at spiritually? Where are you at, emotionally? Where are you at on your past relationships? Are you in a good place? Where are you at in your purity? All these things of this nature, trying to train people up to be in, whatever, like at least a decent place, and going and putting people to go on these encouragement dates in public as a group, and having leaders like yourself, like you're married. I'm not saying it specifically has to be you, but using you as an example, you're married in a successful, relationship, marriage, and having people maybe even go on those dates as well, or having people teach every other week, what it is to be a man, what it is to be a woman, and, what are our duties, what are, their duties, how do we treat each other, how to navigate certain situations, what does the Bible say about this and that, so that not only are people meeting, but they're getting coaching. And so this building both of each other up in a biblical sense, and, where we're at, to try and make some of that stuff happen, because dating in the world is terrible right now. I mean, people are making millions and millions and millions of dollars through these red pill podcasts, and they're giving out terrible advice. They're using things that are correct. They're using statistics, but then they're twisting it to be evil as well in their way. And women are teaching other women to get the bag and, to be manipulative and have the power and all these different things.
Yeah.
And it's terrible. My thought process is it's terrible in dating for a single person right now. And if there's a big opportunity to bring people to God, if you could just see when people are truly following Christ, and you just see how they treat you in comparison because they're following God, not just because they like you. I mean, you're dating because you like each other, but because they're following God's word and will and way. Yeah. I mean, people would be blown away of how different it is. So that's just thought I had.
What you got, Jason?
Yeah, I think that's cool. There's a hard with a group like that. It's hard.
Yes.
That you don't want to you don't want to have approval, with a score. Like if you hit over 70 with how you're doing spiritually, then you can go on dates. Sure. That'd be weird, to have and there's a part of that where I've seen that happen where you're trying to help somebody. Like I've been told once, when I was younger, I didn't have a car, to have these things. And they said, well, you don't have a car, so you shouldn't have a girlfriend because you have no way to take her on dates. And
Amen. Just kidding.
It was Derek that said that. And I was like, I don't know if I 100% agree with that. I'm not. Well, because you're not secure financially, then you shouldn't be in a place where you go on dates.
Sure.
And there's a part to that, which I understand, but there's also a part where it's sometimes people just need to go through stuff to grow up, right? Yeah. They need to learn that lesson on their own. So it's there is a part where you can control the entire thing.
Yeah, it'd be too much, yeah.
But there is that part of it where it's or it's hey, you have a scheduled date on Sunday, but did you read your Bible 5 times this week? If you did not, you lose your chance, and we go to the second guy that was available, which would be weird, which I know that's not your plan, but
right.
It's just funny how that can happen. We can definitely gamify these things to the point where it's hurting other people, and that's hard.
My thought process is, if someone's just clearly not walking with the Lord, I mean, they have terrible purity, they're not even trying, there's no fruit of the Spirit at all. Okay, let's go ahead and for sure, hey, this could be something in the future for you if you, this is for biblical dating, but you're 100% right. But another thing too is, y'all's church has a lot of structure.
Sure.
And sometimes that was bad, and sometimes that was good, right? There's pros and cons to everything.
Yeah.
But I think the majority of the churches, unless you're in some type of leadership position, and I don't mean leadership high up. I mean you're in the choir, or you're doing anything in the church. There's not a lot of. I feel like there's not a lot of discipleship, right? There's not, and I feel like in a lot of non-denominational churches, which is really my goal for it, is there's a lot of people who are, when we say lukewarm or not even warm or really cold, or don't even have enough knowledge to know what it is, a life looks like, what fruits of the spirit look like, what it means. You know what I mean? And so I definitely think you're right. There's got to be a balance, because there can be, you can't control people's lives, and and ultimately we don't even know if people are telling the truth or where they're at and But I do think there's got to be some stops too, like, hey, like.
Yeah, well, it's again, this is an overboard idea when you're thinking about it.
Yeah.
It's like it was having tiers, like, oh well, you're good spiritual, this person's good spiritual, so y'all are on tier A. You're leading, you're doing this thing, you're on tier B, so you can only date tier B people, and then there's tier 3. Those are the people that are like insane, awesome at what they're doing. For God, so you're in tier 3, so you have to earn your levels. But
I would
but
definitely
I make
not do
that
that.
joke to say the truth is that I tell this to people all the time looking for somebody, is that you need to become what you're looking for. How many times I've had conversations with guys that aren't Christians that go, I came to church because I want to find a Christian woman.
Exactly.
And I'm just like, well, she ain't gonna pick you,
Right.
because you're not the kind of man she wants to lead her.
100%.
And so in the same idea, we have to become the kind of person that we want to marry. If you want somebody loyal and loving, you have to be that yourself. If you're not willing to do that, now that's that would be a cool tier, right? Like if you're sacrificial, all those kind of things, is that a thing that then you're looking for that kind of person, right? Like you became this kind of person, you deserve that kind of person. But it's interesting because even in the Bible, it does say, hey, are you doing terrible with stuff? Go find a wife. You're doing bad with your purity, go find a wife. Am I like literally says that? Yeah,
What
pointing
scripture?
that
Yeah,
down
1
here.
Corinthians 7 talks about there's so much sexual morality among you. Like each person should find their own wife. There's so much sex happening outside of marriage.
Wow.
So that's the concept there.
Okay.
I think it's, but that's concepts on how to help people become something, but like qualifying and disqualifying is more, again, it's what I think high criticism comes from is when where the weak points are in the structure that's established. So, and I know you and I talked about this idea of like liability, like a church's hesitation to want to get on board is that, hey, they're the daughter that's been raised in the church, very pure minded. She hears about the group and she joins, and then they go on a date, and then again, you paint worst case scenario when you're talking about liability, right? Yeah. And then she's whether the guy misreads a signal to lean in and kiss or something like that or whatever, like, and then all of a sudden that it's like, oh wait, how did this happen, or who's responsible? Is it the guy? Is it the group? And like navigating the what takes place, the structure of like group settings, it's I could see how that could be wholesome and helpful to facilitate conversations, and then that's what the nature of like the structure of double dating in ICOC churches. I don't even know how stuff had. Do you know if that stuff still happens in singles?
Yeah,
it does.
Some again, some people believe that is a necessity, and other people believe that as long as you're being good and righteous in what you're doing, you're fine.
Yeah.
But there is that spot. The other idea when you were talking about it was like, I imagine like a fun Christian speed date. That could be fun. Like a big group of people like asking questions, learning about stuff, and almost training them how to have an encouragement date. Like that would be pretty cool as a group. Like, hey, we're just gonna have a fun time, and we're gonna ask some questions, but this is kind of how it should feel.
Have you ever done it?
A speed date? Yes.
How'd it go?
It was interesting. Definitely not my style. I'm all about the charisma and the caring, and you can only get so much charisma out in 3 questions.
So it's like 3 questions you ask and answer, or it's 3 questions total. So like they
ask, answer.
So you have 2 and they have 1, or they have 2 and you have 1?
They both have 3. Each person has 3.
Oh, so it's 6 total.
And then I've literally done this at conferences
Yeah.
where they had like a quick speed date and everybody got to meet people for the moment and then move on. Which I feel like would be weird because if there's just one really awesome person, everybody at the end of the date's like, that's the person.
yeah.
And then that one person is stuck like that one lady in the service where he calls her out.
Well, yeah, I remember they did it at one of the Texas conferences, and then I had a girlfriend at the time, and we were like, it was called Speed Encouragement, and I was like, okay, I think that's wait, is that for us or is it not? Like, it seems like it might be dating. It might seem like it might not be. If it's just encouragement, isn't it just anybody who's in a relationship or not? We ultimately decided not to.
I bet. By that you mean she decided or not?
Yeah, so it is an interesting piece of it, but it almost seems to favor the people who are conversationalists.
Sure.
So like, oh, all the brothers and sisters who are conversationalists, like, what about the brother or sister who's not really like, they're a shoulder-to-shoulder kind of person. They're a, hey, let's go to a movie and let's be around each other, and you'll have some social interactions, but more minimal, deeper dialogue or philosophies and all that.
You know what a concern that was brought up to me when I was seeking counsel for, which I didn't think of, I went to a leader from another church, and they're really, really good at community. I'm probably the only one that I've seen in all of San Antonio. I've been in every church, but so I told him my idea, and the thing that he said is, what you really have to watch out for is that there's gonna be some hurt feelings, because the most popular people, or most prettiest, most handsome, most whatever, a lot of people are gonna be going after those people.
Oh yeah,
kind of like a pyramid.
Yeah.
And so a lot of people get their feelings hurt. You'd have to navigate that, and blah, blah, blah.
That's true.
Ooh,
And I've had that
rough.
It's
conversation
it is
with people.
7:45. If you have to bounce.
Yeah, I gotta leave. I've had conversations with people before where like they were trying to find somebody and they couldn't, and I had to learn this myself. Is that though I'm the most popular guy in the ministry or whatever situation, doesn't mean I deserve the most popular girl. Doesn't mean that I deserve the prettiest lady, because in the long run, that's not what I'm really looking for, right? Like I really want somebody that can support me and make my life better. But it's so easy because we're such a superficial culture.
I feel like you keep talking about the personal, but it's like you got to be more like, hey, you're leading or guiding or like supervising. Again, it's valuable what you're saying, but I think I keep hearing you go back to like, hey, you're helping the person inside of it. But he's like, I guess he's talking about the structure of it. But yeah, I'm not saying you're not saying.
Well, that's why I'm leaving, because I'm obviously not.
You got to go back to the pod.
But I mean that in that, even in that situation, how do you train people to realize that it's bigger than the looks, right? Because that's the idea. Like Derek,
you make everybody work out.
No, well, because there's that part. Like I had to realize that. I had to realize that I wasn't going to get the most gorgeous lady. And once I realized that, then I found somebody that was gorgeous to me emotionally. It worked out because I learned that it wasn't just about the looks. I had to tell myself, hey, dude, you're not going to get a supermodel, and it's okay. But how do you train that to people? That's the good question.
My thought process was kind of like to avoid that. Like majority of the dates being you draw a piece of paper with someone's name written on it. Okay, that's who you're going out with. Too bad. Like
chance.
And then maybe the next time you'll pick a person that you
Think
like.
about it as they draw as an activity, and Jason would get all the girls because his ability to draw.
Oh, you're really good drawer?
Single Jason, that is.
Yeah, single, not married. Y'all are amazing. I have to go do another podcast, and Derek doesn't have a second studio. So
that's right. Let me lock the door behind you because I guess I have a kid in the house now. So Matt, do you wanna
just entertain the people?
Yeah. So we can go.
This is the time for you to shine.
This is the time for
your number. Do all that stuff.
Yeah, this is where all the single ladies could reach out to Matt, guys. Leave a comment for him.
Yeah,
but,
we think he's great.
But Matt, any other details about your project that you want to tell the people about that? Yeah. Anyway, you're hosting for the next 60 seconds while I walk.
This can opener is for you.
Okay. I don't know what I'm gonna do with this, but I was gonna use this. But yeah, no, it's just something that I'm pretty passionate about. I do think there's a really big area that could bring people to Christ because of it. And I know a lot of people have gone to church, like they were saying earlier, not really a Christian, but I'm going to church because I'm going to find, blah, blah, blah. But what I think that brings is that, man, there's not 20,000 people in this church, speaking a lot of big non-denominational churches. I go every single week and I don't really talk to anyone. I know a lot of people who've gone to church and they don't have any more friends after going a month, 2 months, 3 months than they did the first time that they walked in. Because a lot of it is just going to church and then never doing anything else in the church and coming back next week. And a lot of these big churches don't even have a midweek. And so I've been to like some groups, and it was nothing wrong with this, but it was just like not my age group that of the majority of people that went. And I'm like, dang, where is, even a men's group, not even talking about dating, just friends where I fit in. There's one particular church that I go to that they have a 25 to 35 co-ed group, and they meet once a month. Like, I don't know what I'm going to do with once a month if I don't have a midweek. You know what I mean? Like, that's rough. And so I guess why I'm so passionate about it is it's not only just for dating, but I see people struggling to even find community in churches, especially these big churches, which is really counter. Like, it doesn't really make much sense. You think the more the people that are there, the higher chance you are to meet someone. But I almost feel like it's the opposite. Smaller the church, the stronger the community, more you get to know people, more you have relationships.
Yeah. I was talking to a friend who's actually also single, and we were talking about the idea of like different churches have different cultures, and even the brothers who hang out with the sisters and what that's like. Like, it makes me wonder what different cultures, what different churches have, as you mentioned, like formal structure. Like you mentioned the group that said we're meeting every single month, and then the churches that don't have a formal structure, but they're informal stuff as far as, hey, brother so-and-so he's having a movie night at his apartment, and anybody who wants to go to movie night. Again, where there's just maybe there's a communication hub, whether it's like a group me or a WhatsApp or whatever, there's a group, and then there's social functions even happening. Well, one of my friends who leads a church was telling me that, like, because I was asking him, I was like, so he was sharing with me how his members don't hang out with each other. And I was like, it's interesting. And then so I was like, okay, like, so for the most part, the people in the church, they come to church together, there's midweek together or whatever, but then there's not. And I was like, so is there somebody who's doing events? Like, hey, we're going, me and this guy going bowling, does any of y'all want to go? And then does everybody just say no? Or there's not that initial person who's saying, hey, we're going bowling, or again the movie night, or a game night, or is there no initiator, and then is it just simply no response or reciprocity to that initiator, or which part of the piece is it? And I began talking to him also about this idea of what COVID did for the behaviors and the habits of people in the church, and how in some ways it became easier to not, do different things socially. But anyway, I'm just curious your thoughts on it. Like the churches you've been to, does it seem as though because you mentioned there's that one church that does the dancing stuff.
Oh, okay. So that was more like what you said, informal.
Yeah.
So it was just a guy who basically just kind of got people together, and then even started reaching out to people at the dance socials.
Yeah.
So majority of the people at that church, especially in leadership, they didn't have anything to do with that.
Yeah.
But I almost feel like what you just said is the more informal side, instead of having something like official or a meetup, and like that's definitely a lot easier. It almost could be like a stepping stone. Hey, let's do that first.
Yeah.
Make that successful, and then maybe we could think about, taking it to the next step somewhere that would be willing to. Obviously, I'd be having conversations with leaders in the background, because I definitely feel comfortable taking over planning, different places that we could go to, and events and ideas and organization, marketing, getting people together. No problem at all. But as far as putting me in like a leadership position as like trying to coach people or something, like, hey, I'm kind of single myself. You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
So it would be me taking a part of it on the learning side. You know what I mean? And getting discipleship, whether I'm dating or not, just preparing before I even get into that. But yeah, I think that would be, I really do think there should be like, this is how you godly date. Anybody who actually wants to do it, let's do it. I feel like every church, it should be like mandatory that they do that. Like,
it does make you think about all the married people. Like, do they become married outside and then come inside, or how does? I guess that was, I was curious too when
Be a
you were
good poll to take.
the what? Oh,
Poll
yeah.
to take, yeah.
I was wondering, how did the married couples become married in these settings where there's not a culture of men and women um, doing, again, double dates or going out and things of that nature? It makes me curious about how that works.
Yeah. I don't think it does. No, really. Like, I just think, I mean, I almost feel like people get insecure in church. Like, hey, let me go talk to this sister that I don't know. And then, hey, people look at me like, hey, you trying to talk to that girl at church? Like, that's crazy. Like, that's so sinful. Like, was he going to be like judged or whatever? But honestly, that's probably someone he should give a chance to go talk to because she's going to church. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think that there's so much looseness within big non-denominational churches that nobody's there to teach and build people up and navigate that with them. And so it's just kind of a free-for-all. Like, I know this one particular guy, you could tell he's really sincere about his faith and about his walk and stuff like that.
Yeah.
But the things that he's doing outside of it probably for the same reasons. There's not a program. He probably goes to a bigger church. There's probably not a lot of community. There's probably not a lot of people getting together. Or I feel like a lot of the churches that I've been to, the community is if you are, and praise God, because we need these groups, people struggling with like drug addiction and like really broken people. Like,
Right.
Praise God again. We need that. I'm not saying anything bad about that. Or people that are 60, 70, 80 years old, like this filled the churches with all kinds of meetups and events and things for them. But it's all of these people in between. And I think people, leadership must think, oh, they're so busy. You know, in your 20s, you're trying to build your life and set it up. Or, you know, in your 30s, they're already married and nobody wants to meet up. Like, and to me, when I read the Bible, when I'm reading Acts, it's talking about how the disciples ate food together and shared everything together.
Right.
And it's constantly lift each other up. How can you lift each other up if you're not having community together?
Yeah.
And I think that's one of the biggest opportunities for Christian churches, period. Forget dating. Our community is very, very bad. Like, it's very bad. There's no reason. I know multiple people that go to church every single week and have no more friends when they first started than months down the road.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
And then, so I also like to acknowledge when somebody like yourself who has also a strength in bringing people together or doing activities. You said something to me on even on talking about pickleball or something on Thursday. I was like, oh dang, like that was fast. Or the thought process to do that. But I know I've talked to you about other things that you're doing with friends, whether it's dancing or going out to eat to a restaurant after, or some of these other things that you're doing. So I think it's refreshing to see somebody like yourself who's taking the initiative to, hey, I'm not just gonna let this problem stay a problem, but I'm going to try to do something about it.
I really appreciate that, because I feel like maybe even a lot of the excuses that I gave, and I'm just kind of thinking about this right now.
Yeah.
Excuses I gave myself for not going to church or not pursuing my faith or my walk is because, you know, it's not only me going through this. Like, I'm talking to people and there's nothing weird about them. Like, they're actually pretty cool. I always consider some of these people cooler than me, right? Yeah. Maybe they're more charismatic or better looking or whatever the case. If they're having the exact same struggles or issues, and it's pretty widespread, my conviction that God gave me was, hey, well, don't complain about it. Like, you could be a solution. And I think this is something I'm discovering in my own life. Man, I've dealt with a lot of insecurity, like, to the point where I think I've gotten over a lot of it, which I did. But I didn't see in this background there was a whole lot more. Not believing in myself that, you know, I could be a leader in certain areas. And I think just pushing really hard in my career and seeing, like, for instance, there was 50 offices at my last job. Yeah. And I was number 6 in the entire company out of all 50 offices as far as a recruiter.
Yeah.
That's a lot of people. You know, it's over 100 people that like, you know. And just finding a lot of success in things that I never thought I could do. That's like, man, like, if I didn't think I could do these smaller things, why not these bigger things? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And so that's something I'm realizing I've been battling with my whole life. So, yeah, man, I think I'm not 100% sure I'm going all the way in on it, but my thought process is, hey, if there's an issue, why can't I be the person to at least catapult it in the right direction. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Also, the sometimes there's a thought process. Oh, I'm single and I haven't solved whatever yet. But I think there's a strength inside of being single because there's this idea that singles have expressed to me along the way, which is like, hey, like why are maybe at a conference and then there's some married people speaking at a singles conference. Again, is that wrong? Like, no, they probably were single at one point. But it's like, hey, why don't we have single people doing the single classes about single issues, you know, depending on what's happening there. And there is something about somebody who knows it, not saying like from years past, no, he's like, no, I know it from how it is right now, and who's taking the initiative, because something that unfortunately can happen is it can, if the marrieds are always coming to the rescue, it can make things, oh, hey, we can't do anything for ourselves. The marrieds have to kind of almost come save us or help us or, you know, or do this thing. But the power of the singles owning the solution to whatever situation that's coming up. So anyway, all the more reason that I'm looking forward to seeing what comes about in what you're doing. Because it sounds like even what you were saying is you can do the informal pretty quickly, and then the formal might come along the way, you know, with more buy-in along the way with different groups. Is there I guess my question to you is, so I suppose different churches have, you know, there's the bigger churches in San Antonio. Do you think it's an advantage to stay? I guess what I'm curious is to stay or move around churches in even with this project in mind. Like I can see one advantage of staying, for example, CBC, you know, you've talked about it in the past, or I can see the advantage of like hopping and like and seeing difference. I can see strengths and weaknesses in both, but what's your perspective?
Right. I think at a church, let's just say if it was CBC, I think that church is so big, why make it bigger when there's so much to navigate with how many people are in that age group and that potentially might be interested. I mean, when the singles get together once a month, I mean, it's it's filling up a large space of the second auditorium that they have. So if I would get some buy-in, at least on the informal part first, and it was a bigger church like that, I'd probably just keep it there and learn, first of all, you know what I mean? If I start to get the whole city and every single church that I can involved and a lot of issues go south, well, now I'm just looked at as, you know, oh, it's just caused issues. We're not going to do this anymore. Yeah. So I think, you know, growing, learning, being humbled, seeing issues that come up, and then what can we do about it? What does the Bible say of how we should navigate this? And getting more questions answered. And then when I go to different churches and maybe skeptical, we've gone through that and this is how we've handled it in the past.
Something for you. So one of my friends, actually, I did their wedding in the Dallas area, and they're part of this informal Facebook group. And when they actually, and I'm not saying just to plug a Facebook group, but I'm plugging the idea more than the platform. So the idea, again, you have people in this group. I imagine that could be in GroupMe, it could be Facebook, it could be any platform that's a discussion oriented. But would they have somebody who's interested? So I think this one group is inside the International Churches of Christ. So you know that, but then you plug in your name, where you're from. Are you looking to travel today? Like long distance, yes or no? Location, hobbies, age, so kids, whatever. Like, so you're plugging in almost ideas about you, but it's informal. So nobody can blame the leaders for like building this group. It's informal, volunteer oriented. People have built. But again, I literally married somebody who met that way. I officiated the wedding ceremony that met in the group like that, and I wonder if any part of that can be a tool that's used with what you're talking about.
100%. I think even just doing it at one church to start with, making it informal and using that group so that there's one streamlined place for communication, which I think actually, definitely would do that. It's a great idea. Thank you.
Awesome. Good stuff, brother. Well, do you have anything else for today?
Nothing I can think of off the top of my head.
All right. Well, appreciate you hopping in. Oh, one thing we do to close on the pod, on our Tuesday night pod, is we do a direct-to-camera moments. This pod is for our kids, so you would talk into the camera to with a message for your kids in the future. It might be a lesson from this past week. It could be a story. It could be whatever direction. It could be advice, whatever it is. But I'll go first, and then if you have something, you can go, but you could also choose to pass. So let me go ahead and go. All right, what do we got this past week? Oh, I got it. All right, Corzin. So this past week, one of my favorite moments with you was actually last night. Again, it might have been 2:00 in the morning. I was feeding you, and you had your bib on, and so I'm feeding you, and then you go like you just started to grab things again before you haven't really grabbed things. Like if I'm changing your diaper, you'll grab the blanket that's behind you, and I'll pick you up, and you're still holding it. But so you begin to grab things for the first time over the last like 2 weeks or so. And last night I finished feeding you, and the reason we have the bib on you is because you spit up so frequently. I didn't know that babies spit up as much as they do, but you spit up so frequently. And then so last night I finished feeding you, and I was looking at you, and then you grabbed your bib and you picked it up, and then you spit up, which you completely missed, like the whole bib, the whole point of the bib. And it was almost too perfect of a moment when you were just being playful. And I think as we go through life, sometimes so many serious things happen around us that we can lose the spirit of being playful. And I think something that I'm looking forward to building with you as you enter into different phases of your life is being playful with you, whether we're wrestling or playing ball or playing catch or showing you video games or getting into all these things. I'm looking for the playful side of childhood, but just know that it's always special, and it brightens up so many people's days in bringing playfulness into situations. So one, you already have that, and I'm looking forward to see how you insert that into the various parts of your life as you get older. But I love you, and we'll see you on the next one. And then Matt. Oh, whoops. There we go.
I left. The biggest thing I would say.
You'd be into this camera here.
Right. The biggest thing that I would say is try your best not to learn from experience. And what I mean by that is if somebody tells you something is going to cause a consequence, try and believe them. You could ask the why, which is the biggest reason I think that I did things because I didn't understand the why, or being so free-spirited, I shouldn't have to go through that consequence and doing it anyways, and then finding out firsthand, but it causes you so much strife. You'll be reset back in life so much. Instead, try to learn from other people's experiences so that you don't have to go through all the pain that they went through. Be smart in the decisions that you make. Think about everything that could and can't happen. And always believe in yourself. Always believe in yourself. You'd be so surprised of what you could achieve and how much you can do if you just go try it with confidence. Don't forget the confidence. Literally, if you're insecure, your ability to perform at 100% of your talent gets reduced to 80, 70, 60, depending on how insecure you are, right? So try to do everything with confidence, and don't be scared to go after something that you really, really desire. And chances are, if you're risking embarrassment, you probably be doing the right thing, because the people who are willing to stick out are the people who are going to get laughed at, who are going to fail. but those are the people who do extraordinary things. So follow your heart's desire. The last thing I'll say is make sure whatever that you do and you decide to do is because it's who you are and not because you want to be cool or be seen or you feel like you'll reach some kind of status. I'll put it to you like this. Albert Einstein trying to be the best he can at sports because he thought a girl would like him or that it'd make him masculine or whatever the case may be, when what he really should have been doing was pursuing being the world's smartest person because that's in alignment with who he was, who he is. So, yeah.
Love it. All right, everybody. We'll see you on the next episode. Peace.